Welcome to the Iferia TechCast, where we bring you all things science, engineering, technology, and innovation. Today, we are joined by Laura Alyn, a former classroom teacher, a PhD candidate, and a guide who works at the fascinating intersection of structured education and intuitive exploration. She's the founder of the ILA Institute and the host of the Grounded Spirits podcast, where she helps people bridge their inner and outer worlds. She uses frameworks like the four elements and dream work to help people move from performance based living to purpose driven being. In this episode, we'll explore how to integrate logic and intuition and what spiritual wellness can look like for highly analytical minds. So, Laura, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much, Ezekiel, for having me.
I am excited to have you here today. Quickly, let's dive in. Your background is a unique blend. A former classroom teacher, a PhD candidate, and an explorer of intuition, astrology, and the inner world. So, what was the journey that led you to bridge what many see as two separate worlds, the empirical and the intuitive?
Yeah, so growing up, I just loved everything. I loved exploring and learning about everything. And so it was really hard for me to pick just one thing. So when I went to college, wanted to just you do everything. And I ended up doing a lot of just classes. I would read through the catalog that my college offered and just pick the classes that were interesting to me. And so by the end, I had my bachelor's in psychology and I had two minors in French and in mathematics. And at the time, people would say, like, what do you want to do since you're doing psychology and math? Like, what are you doing with that? And I would say that I really want to map out how the brain works. And so my mom is a teacher. So I grew up around teachers and how the school system, well, all the problems within the school system. And so by exploring and mapping out how it is that we learn that I've now done 10 years later since graduating from college, it's really allows people to take all of the jumbled mess that we have in our inner world and like organize it. I basically created a chart that is like little cubbies where whatever it is that you're learning, you can put into this framework, this schema, so that you can organize your thoughts and then be able to take action on.
Fantastic. So, Laura, for our audience of engineers, data scientists, and logical thinkers, the idea of intuition can feel abstract. So, how do you, with your academic training, define intuition in a way that feels concrete and accessible? Is it a form of data processing that we don't yet have instruments for? I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
Yes. So that's one of the one things I love talking about astrology. So I know you asked about intuition. I'm going to talk about astrology briefly, and then I'll answer for intuition.
Sure.
Astrology can't be scientifically proven because in order to do so, the way that the study would have to be, uh, like the methods to use in the study, it would be that we would have the same person born at different times. So it'd
Mm,
be what part of you is you from your genetics and what part is being shaped by where the energies of where the planets are. So you would need to have different birthdays in order to analyze what parts are to be able to separate the values of the energies of the planets. Does that make sense?
yeah,
A little bit.
a
So
little
then
bit.
with intuition, the way that I have designed the study that I'm still thinking about how I'm actually going to concretely do it would be to have, let's say, 100 participants. And each participant, you would have them try to use their intuition to guess the next sequence of a movie, let's say. And you would analyze how they feel in their body, because that's how I would define intuition, that it's a feeling that we have in our body. So it could be, some people say like it's a gut thing reaction, or something. Some people say that they feel it like a tightness in their neck or their chest. And so that's what they call intuition. And so by analyzing the way that people feel, and if they got it right, what specific processes did they take in order to guess correctly what the next sequence was going to be, then you would be able to like pinpoint where intuition is located in the body. Because with my
Mm.
research, I've seen that it is the body in general, but whereas STEM is very much in the mind and wanting to have structure and safety and foundation in the mind. Intuition being in the body is a magical thing that no matter how much science improves, there's always going to be mysteries of the bodies that we just don't understand. And I think that that's where intuition can come in as a valid way of knowing, to design these studies that really allow us to feel into our bodies and get actual data to come out of it, verifiable, valid data to come out of a specific feeling of the body. Because right now, when people say, "Oh, it's just a feeling," you don't know where that is. You can't pinpoint it where it is in your body, or even like the different planes of existence. Like, is it in your astral body versus your physical body versus like all these other things? And so, if we take the time to bring awareness to where this intuition, I call them intuitive hits, so where these intuitive hits are coming from, then we'll be able to get more knowledge. And I think that that's where we're moving scientifically.
All right. So, Laura, you use the framework of the four elements for wellness. So, for the systems thinker listening, can you break down uh, how this model works as a practical tool for self-diagnosis and rebalancing, especially for someone in the high stress analytical field?
Definitely. So what I was mentioning earlier with STEM being in the mind is, well, the reason why we have so many mental health issues, I think globally, is because we are putting too much stress on the mind, and we are putting with STEM, I think that it's really about the foundations of the way that the world works, but we are trying to chisel out the boxes. But going back to the cubbies, we're trying to chisel out the boxes with science, but we're not allowing the water to come in yet. But we need the water to come in order to keep going, so that we're not mentally drained. And so the water, the quote unquote water that I'm talking about, is the soul. And so in my research, I have found that the soul is closely aligned with the element water. Anytime that so what I did is I read hundreds of books from the beginnings of time. So like from like Hammurabi's code, like in the BC, all the way till present day. And then from all different religions and all different countries and backgrounds. And so what I found is when people would talk about water or talk about the soul, they were talking about similar parts of the being. And so the soul is split up into three different parts, which is actually what, oh no, and I'm confusing that. I was going to say, I think it's Aristotle that does that. Yes. Aristotle that separates it into the three different parts. And so for the soul, we have reason, which we all use. Then imagination, which we all need to use. And I think that this is where STEM people need to tap into these different parts. So with reason, it's it's easy for people in STEM to have a strong foundation in reason. But with imagination, I think that this is where it's so important that podcasts like yours speak about innovation, because we could sit down and organize and categorize and catalog all these different parts about our existence and go further and further into science. But unless we have some sort of imagination on how to group it all together and bring it to the human experience, it's not going to mean anything to anybody. And I think that's why we have so many issues, like in climate, with climate change issues, because people aren't willing to look at outside of the box and get like have a bird's eye view to see like what is actually going on so that we can make positive shifts. And the third part of the soul is the spiritual part, the intuitive part. And so this is different than the body part that I was talking about earlier with intuition. This is an intuitive way of knowing, which comes from art or it comes from religion. It's having that connection with something outside of yourself. And so in this situation, I'm talking about soul with water. It's about going within and asking yourself, like, why do I feel this way? What is going on? Um, and so again, somebody who is so logic based may have a hard time tuning into those feelings. And it is really hard as somebody who I was a web developer for many, many years. So I was always around STEM people. And so it is really hard to get in tune with your feelings, but it is necessary in order to get to the next level and to make your work in STEM better. Because when you have those feelings in it, that's how you get connections. And at the end of the day, what I found through my research, which is all of how it all started, was the question of what's the purpose of education? Why are we even learning anything? And I learned that the purpose is connection. That's the whole point of everything, is just to learn how to connect with people. And so it's so cool that we're having this conversation or like halfway around the world, and we're able to do it through STEM, like we're here online, to be able to talk. And that's what it comes down to, is having that human element and connection.
Interesting. So, in a world that often prioritizes productivity and external validation, particularly in STEM, what does spiritual wellness actually look like as a daily practice for a busy professional?
Yes. So going back to your first question about the elements. So we talked about water. Now let's talk about fire to answer the second question about productivity. So fire is the sign or like the element of productivity, of action, of getting things done, which is what STEM people, well, everybody wants. We all want the
Yeah.
results. We want to know what's the quickest way, the most efficient way. We want to optimize the problem in order to get the results that we want. And in my framework, at the very top is power. And that is what everybody wants. And I would even go as far as like plants and animals and even water. Everybody just wants power and how to use it safely and responsibly. And so what we have tried to do in the past is shape nature and to fit ourselves, humans. And that is what gave us power. Now, I think after COVID, a lot of people shifted and are now seeing that it's more powerful to show up as your authentic self. And that's how you're going to gain happiness. That's how you're going to gain fulfillment. And that's where a lot of these spiritual practices come from, of how can we be happy? I think everybody just wants to be happy at the end of the day. Power is a part of that happiness, because if you are being told what to do, when to do it, go to work at this time, wake up at this time, go to the gym at this time, then there's no freedom, there's no free will, there's no happiness in that. You need to go within and ask yourself what's going to make you happy. And so the first way to do that is to figure out what it is that you like. What are you interested in? What would you learn about regardless if someone paid you or not? What do you actually care about? And this could be found on social media, just swiping along, like finally, that's a lot of it. How I learned about astrology was through TikTok or Instagram, just like swiping, listening to what people are saying, and then going and reading and doing all the research and making sure that it checks out. Or even like with AI, like it's so easy now to figure out ourselves. And you could even ask like ChatGPT and say like, give me 10 questions to learn how to figure out what I'm interested in, and then go from there. And I think that once we can blend the two, so somebody who is in STEM and who may enjoy doing the math, doing the computations, or being on the computer and coding, you may enjoy it, and that's great. But like, how can you bring it to the next level? And I think that is the number one thing that I've seen being in the STEM field for a long time, probably like 15 years. Then teaching STEM, I taught kindergartners how to code all the way up to eighth grade. And so seeing how people interact with computers, like it's really important to bring that passion to what you actually like, and have you can even start like your own website or your own blog, or create content, or however it is to bring it to the next level of sharing the things that it is that you enjoy. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, Laura, you've said we should, quote unquote, stop trying, just be. So, for an audience of high achievers who are conditioned to always be doing, what's the first smallest step towards embracing that state of being without feeling like they are being unproductive?
Yes, this is such an important question. And for the last 2.5 years, I have been trying to figure out this answer. And so here's what I have so far.
Okay,
Um, so I, like a lot of people, was on that hustle culture where I couldn't stop. It was like the shame would come, or it would just be really bad if you would stop, or like I'm not going to achieve my goals, like I need to keep going, keep going, keep going. And then it came to a point where it's like, well, when's going to be enough? Like I had already built the business. I already had my podcast had already taken off. My books were already doing well. Like and I was still like chasing for the next thing. Like now I want a restaurant. Now I want a publishing company. Now I want this. Now I want that. And it really had to come back down to that passion and those interests. Like, well, why am I doing this in the first place? And what I found is that the things that I love, the things that bring me joy, are education, creativity, and spirituality. And what I did is, by diving into these three topics, 4 companies ended up popping out of them. And now I've combined them all into the parent company, which is called the Ornelian, and we make luxury human. And so, what I mean by that is that luxury shouldn't be just for the 1%. Luxury should be for everybody. And the funny thing is that even the 1%, they're still not happy because they haven't mastered all 4 of the elements that I was talking about earlier. So water was one of them. Then we had air. So air is the mind. Air, this is why, kind of like the particles, we can't physically see the internet from my computer to your computer all the way in Nigeria, but it's like we could say it's through the air. But it's really just sharing knowledge. That's what the air component is, and I think STEM people do that really well. Then Earth is the body. We're talking about how the mysteries of Earth and the feelings of Earth, and there it's about really digging into what makes you feel seen. And so again, with the interests, with me, the astrology, I didn't sign up to be an astrologer in that sense, like to be a birth chart reader. It was more of people would just find me and say, "Hey, can you read my chart?" And now on my show, ILA Radio, and I'd love to have you on, I read people's charts, and then we go into their career paths. And so it's really really interesting how things just occur when you stop trying so hard, when you just dive into yourself and dive into your own interests. Things will just start to line up. And it's, I think, letting go of control, which is super hard for STEM majors. Like I said, I'm in there too. um it's being able to trust that good things are going to come, and that we don't have to control every single aspect, because then we don't, this goes back to the imagination, that we can only think as like here's the box, and like we can't think outside of that, because these are the things that we've been doing over and over again. But once we can get outside of that box and can see the bird's eye view, which I don't think that we can do, but the I want to say that it's like a divine person or energy, or the universe, however you want to call it. That there's a really great way that Florence Scovel Shinn says it. She calls it the infinite intelligence, and I think that's a really cool way to talk about God. Only God, or like the divine, can see what is really at play and what's really going on, where we can't even see it because we are just humans. We're like little ants compared. And I think that's like the hardest part, is to believe that things are going to be okay if we don't keep trying, keep doing, keep pushing. But what I've seen is that when you do take a step back and you do relax for a little bit, then that's when you create space for magic to come in. So whether you believe that it's God or whoever, I think that we can all kind of agree that magic, and in a way, not even like magic like I point my finger and like something happens, but magic in a way of like love can come in, or joy, discovery, exploration, like these things, freedom. Like these are ideas that I think are very magical, and that can only occur when we allow space for them to. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, sure did. That was quite an elaborate response there. So, Laura, has there been a time where your logical academic mind was in direct conflict with an intuitive knowing? And if yes, then how did you navigate that? And what was the outcome?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was like starting the Ornelian, starting these companies, that I was so ashamed of my spirituality for such a long time, and like the fact that I'm an astrologer, like it just would not line up with the academic that I am. I've been in academia my entire life, you know? Like I said, my mom's a teacher. Like I've been in this world for my entire life. So to completely do a 180 and now to believe in all of these things, that like, how could you possibly believe in this? It was very, very hard. And I just kept searching for truth, and I just kept looking for ways of knowing, and I think that where this is where it's led me. And that's why the chart that I created, it's called the Ornelian Framework. You can find it on my website, theornelian.com/framework, and it outlines all 4 sections and how it relates. It grounds it not only in the vertices of life, so the soul, mind, body, and spirit, but also every single academic subject is on here, as well as any system. Like Maslow's hierarchy of needs is on here. Like every single kind of system that I've like I said, when I did all that reading that came out of it, it all fits in this chart. And I think that is the only way that I was able to rationalize, okay, intuitive hits are real, synchronicities are real, and interactions with the divine are real, because it's it wouldn't have fit so perfectly as it's like it was like a puzzle that I put together that I didn't even like create it. It was just what was, and I just put a light on it. And finding these things through patterns, through data, the way that I was trained to do my whole life, being an academic, um, it's come to a point where the evidence is so rock solid that it's hard to be undeniable. And so that's where I'm at.
Great. So, if you could get every educational institution to incorporate one practice to help students connect with their inner world, so what would that be?
I think to have more reflective prompts instead of multiple choice tests. I had a great teacher in high school, and he would say that multiple choice tests test you on what you don't know, and essays test you on what you do know. And I think at the end of the day, like I said, education is about connection and about learning about yourself and connecting with yourself. And so if we could all add in just a reflective prompt, I think that would really help students understand themselves and also understand where they're going and be able to answer questions. Because there's a great quote, and I wish I could remember who said it, but the quote was, "I only know what I know because I write it down." And so what she
Hmm,
was saying, the context around was that she has to put it on paper for her brain to understand what it is that she's thinking. Because if she's just thinking, it's just like milling around in there. Like there's too many other thoughts going on, and she can't be clear. And so by getting it out on paper, it is now clear. It is now, and then she can edit it so it can be concise. And I think that that's what is really important, just to ask ourselves these questions and to really understand ourselves better. And that's how we're going to be able to connect with our soul, with our bodies, with our spirits. Because I think that as STEM professionals, we do identify with our mind. Correct me if I'm wrong, but how I've seen it in my interactions at in the workplace, we're very locked in our minds, and our minds are great, but the other three are kind of lacking.
All right. So, in your work, which sits at the crossroad of structured research and the vast landscape of human consciousness, what does the word innovation truly mean to you?
I think that innovation is a way for people to move forward as an individual, but also in the collective, and to know that the two are connected. There there is causality between the two.
Hmm,
And I think some people think that it's separate, like your actions don't affect anybody else's. When I don't think that that's necessarily the case. And so with innovation, I would define it as progress, moving forward, and changing the way that the world is for a brighter tomorrow and for, ooh, here's a better way of saying it. I would define innovation as a way, as a process to bring people closer together. And
fantastic.
so, whatever, in any kind of subject that you're studying, I think that there's a way that your work can lead to people connecting and coming together.
Interesting. So, finally, for our listeners who are inspired to begin their own journey of grounded self discovery, where is the best place for them to go find your work and connect with you and get your resources?
Yeah, so the number one place would be the Ornelian. That's TheOrnelian.com. And from there, you can look at the ILA Institute. So, ILA Institute is a place to learn about these 16 ways of knowing that I've identified, and to really go deep to get a full circle of understanding of any subject. Yeah, absolutely any subject, anything that you're interested in, you're going to learn about it from like a 360 view of that subject, to really understand and get a holistic point of view on it. And then my podcast, Grounded Spirits, that Ezekiel mentioned at the beginning, can also be found there, as well as my books, readings. If you do want an astrology reading or any kind of spiritual coaching, it's all there. So that one specifically for under my name. So it'd be thearnelian.com/ it's Laura Alyn. And it's Laura Alyn is also where you can find me. Um, on TikTok or Instagram. So that's ITSLAURAALYN. Thank you so much, Ezekiel.
Yeah, Laura, it's been a really interesting and no, new perspective kind of conversation with you, and I'm really excited to have you on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And if anybody wants to talk about any of these ideas further, or to contradict me and like go for like try um to talk to me about these different things, and we could have a good discussion about these things. It'd be great.
Great.